Let's just face it, drums are awesome. They're super fun to play, they look really cool, there's no better instrument to play in rock music today. And if you're watching this video, I bet you either play drums, you like learning about drums, or you think drummers are really awesome. But just like with everything else in life, drumming comes with pros and cons, pluses and minuses. I thought in today's video, I'd just briefly go over my 5 favorite things and my 5 least favorite things about playing the drums. Welcome to Al's Drum Head. One of my favorite things about playing the drums is that it's a physical instrument, and performing it is a physical act. It involves your entire body, your whole body in motion, and it's the only instrument in the band that does so. Guitar players are limited to their hands and their fingers and their arms and maybe a little bit of toe tapping on the pedals. Key players, a little bit of this, but drums, it's every limb. And it's often your entire body in a physical motion. Every limb is doing something. Often they're doing something different. Another cool thing about the fact that it's a physical instrument is that our physical touch is so involved, and that how hard we hit it or how we hit it or where we hit it changes everything about our performance and what we're doing. It changes our touch, our feel, the sound. It can change the entire direction of the song. For those of us who are kinesthetic learners, the drums really are the best instrument because it's all about touching and feeling and hands and feet and motion and your body moving. It feels really natural for me to play drums, especially after all this time. But even when I first started, it felt right. It felt like what I wanted to do with music. I had played saxophone, trumpet, keyboard, and obviously bass guitar before, but none of them connected in such a visceral way with me like drums did. And as a result, playing drums has been really satisfying in a way that no other instrument has really managed. It's really a sweet spot for me, and I enjoy the physicality of playing my drums. On the other hand, part of that physicality is that it's a huge instrument that you have to schlep everywhere, you have to set it up, and you have to tear it down, and it is so involved, it takes forever. It's so heavy. We have to buy huge cars. We have to buy all these cases with wheels on them and carts, and it takes 2 or 3 trips to get everything in it, and then we've got to spend at least an hour setting it up, miking it up, we play it, and then usually we're the last to tear down and leave because we've got so much stuff to tear down, and because we've been exercising our full bodies, we are tired. There is so much stuff involved with setting up a modern drum set. Even just a 4-piece kit with a couple of cymbals can take 20 or 30 minutes at its quickest to set up. And that's assuming you're not miking anything. If you don't feel like carrying in your own stuff, you're pretty much stuck with borrowing somebody else's kit who has decided, yes, I'll let everybody backline on my kit. And that has pros and cons. Maybe you're only bringing in snares and cymbals and sticks, but it also means you're not playing your own kit. And depending on how you set up your kit and the sounds you prefer and kind of the feel you prefer and how the other person sets up and maintains their kit, that can be a huge problem. One final element of this whole thing is just how much space the instrument takes in your car, on stage. Loading in and out some very large pieces of gear can be challenging. So that's probably one of the things I dislike the most about the drums, is just the physical challenge of getting them to the stage and off the stage. One of the things I love about the drums is that in modern music, they're pretty much indispensable. I mean, you can have a band without a guitar. You can have a band without a keyboard player. You can have bands without singers. You can kind of have a band without a bass player. You can make it work. But let me tell you, a band without a drummer is pretty darn boring. And you're probably not going to get too far. And a drum machine just isn't going to cut it, because in live performance, people want to see that drummer on stage doing drum things, being drummer person. It's a huge visual draw to see a cool drum set up on stage and a drummer just giving a great performance. There's even a little bit of awe, like, wow, he's such a good drummer. I could never play like that. A drummer's primal rhythms kind of reach out and speak to the audience, especially when it's performed live, in a way that you just can't replicate with a drum machine or the little beatbox on a keyboard. We're never going to lose our jobs to machines, because audiences love seeing drummers. And for that reason, we can't be done without. Even though you're needed in the band in order to make the band successful, you're going to find out that there's this incredible culture, language, and knowledge gap between the drummer and the rest of the band in terms of what the drums do. Now, I'm a drummer who understands how to read music and melody and play melodic instruments. And I do it often. And I know chordings, and I can hear, different phrasings and stuff. But very often, a guitarist or a singer or somebody will turn back to the drummer and say, I need you to do something here. Well, what something? Oh, well, can you do like that thing? And you go and you play a few flams on the toms and hit a cymbal, and they're like, that's not it. They have no way of telling you what it is they want you to do, because they don't know the terminology. They don't even necessarily know the different parts of the drum set and what they do and the different sounds they make. So it would be as if we saw a guitar on stage and we see it has strings, but we have no idea how it all makes music. And when we're talking to a guitarist and we're just like, yeah, just do a brah, 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 brah thing, they'd look at you funny. But we get done to it all the time. Another part of this is that very often other musicians and venue owners and everybody else don't understand kind of like the logistical requirements of drums, how much space we need, how many channels we might need on a mixer. Do we need microphones? Do we need power? One of the things I really love about drums, and I think a lot of people who play drums love this about drums, is that every drum set is unique and it's so customizable with today's hardware options. You can really make your drums your own. Pick out your own sizes, your own finishes, your own mounting hardware, how you're going to mount it. Are you going to have one bass drum or two? Are you going to have one up, one down, one up, two down, two up, one down, two up, two down, three up, two down, three up, three down? Neil Peart, Terry Bozzio. The possibilities are endless. And then when we throw in different cymbals and cymbal stands and stackers and percussion and electronics into the mix, you've got a very unique instrument. And the fact is, you can take a Neil Peart drum set and a Terry Bozzio drum set and a Mike Portnoy drum set and a Stuart Copeland drum set and a Herb Alexander drum set, and put them all side by side, and you can see, they've got things that are alike because they all play progressive music and fusion and things like that, but they're all completely different, and it just speaks to the way the drummers attack things differently. So I love the fact that I can continually tinker with my drum set and make new things happen on my drum set. I love getting little bits and bobs. I made a video about that before. I love getting little bits and bobs and kind of figuring out how to make them work on my current drum set the best and make it into my own unique instrument. That's one of the things I absolutely love. And if you're a kind of handsy, hands-on, tinkery person too, the drums can really be your instrument. They're so customizable. It's more customizable than any other musical instrument anywhere. It's perfect for you. One of the things I don't care for about being a drummer is the misconceptions and stereotypes that everybody seems to have about drumming and drummers. I blame Animal. It's Animal's fault. He started this whole thing. Before this, we had Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa and Art Blakey and these dignified gentlemen, just stirring the pot, making the band swing, wearing ties, just really. And then Animal came along and ruined everything. And now everybody thinks that that's what drummers are. We're Animal. Keith Moon also shares a lot of the blame. We're going to destroy our drum sets. We're just thrashing around with no musicality. We have two settings, off and caveman. And that's a little frustrating because, I know a lot about music. I've written music. I play other instruments. I know a lot about sound engineering and mixing. And I've got a lot to offer a band. So no, I'm not just a caveman beating the drums. However, I have a great collection of drummer jokes that I'll be willing to tell you. For example, how can you tell if the stage is level? Your drummer's drooling out of both sides of his mouth. One of the greatest things about the drums is that they're very approachable and very learnable. Basically, if you have arm movement, leg movement, and a fairly good cardiovascular system, you can play the drums. And most of those things are even negotiable. You need to be able to hold a steady rhythm, and you can learn to do that. You don't have to come into it knowing that. It's straightforward concepts that stack easily on each other. You need to learn limb independence, which, most people who know how to drive or operate a computer have some level of limb independence already. It's just time to apply that to a different application. There are so many resources in the internet age for you to learn how to play drums. YouTube, online lessons, online teachers. There's so much out there. It's almost impossible not to be able to learn anymore. Another thing that really appeals to me is that the drums do not require quite as much fine dexterity in the hands as, say, the piano or a guitar. It's basically closed hand most of the time. There's a lot of things to do with fingers in terms of how you make the stick move and react in your hand, but it's not nearly the same dexterous touch as, for example, doing speedruns on a bass. And so for that reason, yes, I can play bass, but I'm a drummer first and foremost. One of the things that I like the least about the drums, and I'm liking it less and less every day, is the amount of wear and tear that drumming creates. Not just on your gear, but on your body. The gear stuff is, goes without saying that as a drummer, you're going to wear through more of your gear than, say, a guitarist is. A guitarist is going to change his strings every once in a while. You have to get new sticks, you have to get new heads, you have to change your bass drum beaters every now and again. There's a lot of maintenance and a lot of wear and tear and a lot of things that have to be replaced. And that's before we even get into things like breaking cymbals, or possibly your drums get mishandled and now you've got a cracked bass drum hoop, or something else goes wrong. On top of which, and I think I mentioned this before, the drums are a heavy instrument, relatively speaking. The only things that are nearly as heavy on the bandstand as a drum set are maybe amplifiers, PA speakers, and some keyboard rigs. But generally speaking, people are very happy to help put the PA speakers here and there and stuff like that. But the drums, for whatever reason, a lot of times we get left to carry those things on our own, and it can kind of be a hassle. And of course, not only is it a heavy instrument to carry, but it is also a physical instrument to play. You have to be in good shape to do this for 3 or 4 hours at a high athletic level. Things will start going wrong with your body. I talked about in my blog how earlier this summer I actually overplayed the drums a bit and was not relaxing my hand. And as a result, I really tore or pull a tendon in my right hand, unfortunately, my dominant hand. And this has made it a little bit painful to play. And so I've had to really deal with, can I get grip sticks? Do I go up a size in sticks? How do I deal with this so that I don't re-injure myself more? Add to that back pain, knee pain, just the physical exertion of playing for 3 hours, often in hot conditions because it's summer out. Are you hydrating enough? Etc., etc. And then there's just the dings and scrapes and bruises that come with handling a lot of metal and a lot of heavy instruments. So yeah, it can be a pretty wearing instrument to play at times. Certainly a lot more wearing than, say, a piccolo or a ukulele. I'm going to just jump to another thing that I don't like about playing drums sometimes, because I do want to end this on a high note. It's hard to practice the drums. I recognize that I'm very lucky. I own this house, and I have a lot of creature comforts in this house. But one thing I still don't have is I don't have a good place to play drums regularly at the drop of a hat. If I want to play the drums, typically what I have to do is reserve the church, because the only other places I could play are in the house, which is going to disturb my family and my dog, or I go set up in the garage, which is not air conditioned, and I'll probably die within about 10 minutes. If I were practicing the bass, I can pretty much just plug in and practice it. I have a headphone amp and headphones. If I really want to be quiet, I don't have to bother anybody. You won't even be able to hear it in the next room. I can't do that with drums. Well, why don't you get an electronic kit and practice that way? Well, electronic kits still make thumps in the house. And I have tried playing electronic kits before, and my dog really doesn't like the thump of the bass drum pad and goes and hides. So that's one thing. The second thing is that electronic drums, quite honestly, are not that satisfying to play. They don't have the same response. They don't have the same feel. They don't have the same reaction. Is it good for general motor skills? Sure. Is it good for your fine touch on the instrument? Absolutely not. Probably the best analogy I could give somebody who's not a drummer is, you have an instrument that basically the only time you can play it is right before you're getting ready to play it for money. You can't practice it at home. It's very inconvenient to set up anywhere. And if you do set it up and play somewhere, people are going to yell at you and say, knock it off because it's racket. The Drummer World forums are full of questions from people who are drummers trying to figure out some place to play. They can't play in their apartments because they'll make noise and their downstairs neighbors will hate them forever. They want to convert garages, and it turns out that making a garage actually soundproof is a $40,000 to $50,000 proposition at best. It is really tough to figure out where to play your drums. To end on a good note, I wanted to leave you with this last thing that is the best thing. It's one of the things I love the most about the drums. And that's that they're so cool. They are incredibly cool. I already talked about how they're a real focal point for the band visually and in terms of music. And so people look at the drummer as kind of like the backbone of the band. You are driving this band. You are making it move. And then if you do an awesome fill, or there's some pyrotechnic move that you do, or you're playing this rad, sick rhythm that just makes everybody jaw drop, or you just hit 4 on the floor and everybody starts dancing because it's so groovy, drumming is cool. Part of the reason I picked up the drums, besides the fact that there were very few drummers in the town where I lived, and I wanted to play in a band, and we needed a drummer. Okay, that's great. But then I started playing drums, and I noticed, people were giving me a lot more attention than they did when I played saxophone or when I played bass, because drums are very cool. they just speak to people. And there's something so primal and so visceral about seeing a drummer play drums, especially playing them well. When the bass drum starts hitting you in the chest and the rhythms start washing over you, and you look up there and there's a drummer doing his thing, it's just cool. And that's what I love about this instrument, is that it's so cool. So there's 5 things I love about the drums. There's 5 things I really don't love about the drums. What did you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there something else that really hits it for you with the drums, or really makes you sad about playing drums sometimes? Drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it. Once again, I really appreciate you supporting this channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, enable your notifications. Hey, I like drumming. I also like you. Thanks for hanging with me.